Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about a new survey that was taken by Mindshare Partners that talks about mental health at work. This is something that I've been pretty strict about, and sort of like even this last weekend, I was talking about how I have a three strikes rule where if after three times of putting me in a stressful position in a year, I start looking for employment elsewhere, there's a lot of reasons for that. Mental health is one of them. And so we're going to be talking about how mental health is affecting the workplace and how people report upon it. And we're going to see some, in my opinion, some pretty disturbing stuff. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Might I take a moment to recommend our long-term sponsor? Long-term, as in we've been working together for almost 3 years now, which is pretty crazy. And a lot of changes have happened at Dev Mountain. They've changed a couple locations in the past to now they're in the Lehigh area. They're also in Dallas and Phoenix. But if you're interested in considering a coding boot camp, might I recommend devmountain.com. They have programs in full stack JavaScript, iOS development, QA, UI, UX. You can find out more information at devmountain.com. So we're going to start with a high level, like one page sort of findings, I should say. But one thing I want to say is that not all mental health at work is something that is like you see the negative effects of your work environment onto yourself. Sometimes you don't see them. But if you do see that something is negatively affecting you in the workplace, it's up to you to try and make it better. Because what we're probably going to find in here is that no one else is going to make it better for you. Like, you can try, but, we'll see what happens. But anyhow, let's look at a high level sort of infograph that they created here. So 60% of people said essentially that the experienced symptoms of mental health condition in the past year, and that it's the norm at work and not the exception. So the majority of people who were interviewed, or I guess I should say surveyed, said that having mental health issues, and mental health doesn't necessarily mean like you have schizophrenia or things like that, and we'll dive deeper. It could be anxiety, stress, rapid heartbeat, sleeplessness. That's the norm. That's the norm. And then you go on to say, well, employees are afraid to talk about mental health at work. 60% of people never have talked about it. And then 52%, so basically 1 in 2 people who did talk about it, said that it was neutral or actually negative. And least comfortable talking to HR and senior leaders. So you can see, based off of that, why a lot of people are still suffering in their workplace. Now, 61% said that their productivity was affected by them being in a bad mental state, and 37% said their work environment contributed to it. And then so here's a good thing. People are more willing to help. I guess this isn't necessarily a good thing, but people are willing to help. Like in this situation, you're 2 times as more likely to give support than to ask for support. Now, think about that. That's sort of interesting. And then we go, and this is something that you see. So I fall into the millennial categorization. I'll be 32 this month. 3 out of 4 Gen Zers left their past jobs due to mental health issues, and 1 in 2 millennials did, and then 20% of all respondents. So the people who are in the prime of their working, millennials and Gen Zers, because everyone else is, for the most part, getting to retirement age or on their way out. But the prime, the biggest bulk of people working today, and I don't think this is a dig at millennials. I don't think this is a dig at Gen Zers. I think this is a dig at companies where you have roughly 2/3, we'll just average these together, say 2/3 of the bulk of your workforce saying that they have left your company, left your organization due to mental health issues that their job was having upon them. So, employees want support, mental health training, clear information about resources, more open culture about mental health at work. Some great ways. A lot of times I say this about a lot of things where the being able to be yourself and being able to be open and be able to have that confidence that you're not going to be judged for who you are, whether you're a white male, whether you're a black woman, whether you're a transvestite or trans female, that, you know, whether you have right side beliefs, left side beliefs. In this case, just being able to speak about mental health. The point I'm trying to get across is that oftentimes there is a layer of I have to pretend to be somebody that I'm not, that adds a level of stress. And if you're suffering from mental health, you have to pretend that you're not suffering from mental health, and that causes a lot of issues. So this goes on to say that mental health it depends, breaks down in different ways, as you would expect, I suppose. Let's see. Women were more likely to have gotten treatment for mental health than men, I suppose. Black and Latin respondents experienced higher rates of every mental health compared to others, and were likely to have left a previous role for mental health reasons. All right. And then millennials, Gen Zers, and LGBTQ plus respondents had symptoms for longer durations, were remote and more comfortable. Okay, so cool. Let's dive a little bit deeper. That's some of the highlights here. And so I'll attach this link here for anybody who is interested in, actually it's not a link, it's a download, but I'll put it somewhere so you guys can have access to it for anyone that's interested in it. So this is a work support. So dive a little deeper into what we're actually looking at here. And I haven't read this full thing yet, so we can sort of read it together and see some of the highlights. So this is mainly focused on the U.S. workplace, so it's going to sort of depend on where you're at. So they sort of make this introduction statement, which I really like, which is mental health at work is a crucial factor for employee wellness, engagement, as well as diversity and inclusion in the U.S. So I think this very first part of the sentence, that is a crucial factor for employee wellness. And as I have gotten older, and as my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, and I see that they progress in age, their mental health goes, and I see people, that's what a lot of people think about. What I think about is the people who I know, who I'm in the same age demographic, that my equivalent, my peers literally in life and in profession, that are at jobs in which I've had some of them jokingly say that they're going to fellatio a shotgun if their work environment continues like this. And and I'd like to think they're joking, and you try to help them get out of those places. But that's a very dark thing to say about your work environment. And I think it affects people in various ways, because you're spending 5 days a week. That's 5 days a week you're spending somewhere else. I mean, during the weekdays, yeah, you might have an hour or two to yourself a day, but you got dinner, then you got bed. So you need to make sure of that. And this goes in to say that 1 in 5 Americans have a diagnosable mental health condition, and suggests that at one point in their life, 80% of people will, which is pretty astounding when you actually think about it. And then it even goes into, so like a lot of times it's easier to change things once you're able to, and this is in any environment, if you can show, because we're a capitalist society, right? So if you're able to show a cost associated with that, that oftentimes you're like, okay, this is costing us, in this case, apparently, due to mental health conditions and loss of productivity, about $16.8 billion a year. And if you could say, hey, we could spend $100 million and half that maybe we can help some people, and you can sort of kill two birds with one stone. So yeah, and this we talked about the 60% reported that a negative environment is more often than not. And this is interesting. So this is mental health at every level seems to be an issue. So from the entry level to the C level, which is like your CEOs and stuff like that. Yeah. Here's the official breakdown of Gen Zers. It's kind of crazy to think that my parents are baby boomers. Is that kind of crazy? Like, I don't know. I think of my grandparents as baby boomers, but maybe I don't know. But companies need to support mental health or retain talent. 1 in 5 people left to get better to change it. And I've talked about this in the past where sometimes at least for me, I've had to leave roles. That's why I have a 3-strike policy. I've had to leave roles where I've said, like, I am miserable now. Like, I used to come home, and this never occurred to me, but I was having a conversation with a tech lead of mine, and he had said that the job had made him miserable, and that he used to come home and love to write code. And I was essentially going through exactly what he was describing, where he's like, yeah, man, I've always loved coding. I've always had side projects, but after about 6 months here, I don't go home. I don't do that anymore. I hate it. They've ruined it for me. And then I was like, yes, the same things happened to me. And so what's happening is they're affecting my mental health. And so that's when I knew it was time to move on. But 50% for millennials and 75% for Gen Zers. Like I said, the majority of workforce coming through, although I guess Gen X actually is, I guess the upper end of Gen X probably have baby boomers on their way out. So the coming workforces, although if you're saying, I guess you're saying 18 to 38, you have a 2/3, which is a good portion of I imagine, the working world. This goes into a little bit more detail about how mental health is different by minority communities, which I can imagine. Anytime is Latinx. So this is how out of touch I am, I guess. Latinx is an actual term. I thought that was a typo on the front, but apparently I don't know. But yeah, so I'd imagine that groups that have increased scrutiny, increased bigotry, that's already going to weigh on their mental health. I know I haven't talked about this before, but I have a close family member who is transsexual, and it's a I hear horror stories from time to time that stress me out just hearing them, and I can only imagine how that stresses her out. So, and then you say apply that to the workplace and so on and so forth. And, but yeah, okay. Findings. So what did they find out? So they're going to tell us about stigma. Of course, there's stigma. Okay. Let's zoom in a little here. So talk about how mental health has affected actual people. So 40% of people said they had no symptoms at all from mental health issues. At least almost 60% said one. People are feeling anxious, accompanied by sweating, rapid heartbeat, trembling, upset stomach, dizziness, or fainting. That sounds like you almost have the flu. And anyone would tell you that if you've actually thought about your mental health, it has physical you have physical illnesses associated with that. Felt sad, tired, numb, or lost interest or pleasure in most activities for at least 2 weeks. That's sort of what I was talking about earlier in my own case, where I stopped enjoying all the things I used to enjoy. Strong worry or preoccupation with your weight or body. Strong fears. Emotional challenges associated with your sexual interests, activities, or choice of partner. I guess just, does that mean like you've cheated? like, hey, I was so stressed about work, I cheated. I don't know. Felt limitless energy, rapidly came up with new ideas at once, talked nonstop, moved quickly. This is just ADHD. Nightmares or flashbacks of traumatic event. Felt that people secretly had something against you, or that someone in your group was secretly trying to influence your thoughts or behavior. I've had a couple people that I've known who have felt like this, and I was like, you're being kind of paranoid, man. But you can see that this has impacts on you the largest of which is an actual physical body response, which is of 40%, the majority of people felt that. Anxiety is awful. I've been on anxiety medication as a kid. I say as a kid, I mean like 18 to 20. Around there. But I got off of it after about a year because I just hated the way it felt. So like a lot of those medications are really bad for you, and there's other ways of dealing with it, and that for me is how I dealt with it in other ways, such as sort of whatever was making me anxious, I tried to tackle head on, and I realized it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But I still suffer from anxiety from time to time. As some of us developers are sort of closet people, or we stay. April calls me a homebody because like the second I leave my house, I'm like, yo, I gotta get back to my house, dog. After a while, I just want to be home. So I think that's part of how I deal with anxiety nowadays. I just like to be home. But anyhow, half response lasted more than a month. Yep. Not usually something that's just a day-to-day. Oftentimes this is a very long-term thing. So women are 40% more likely to get diagnosed than men. I'd imagine that's a little bit cultural in America. Men don't cry. Men keep everything on the inside, so they die earlier. That's changed a little bit, but I would say even at my age, 30, 31, a lot of people, a lot of our generation, and still very uncomfortable talking about their feelings, talking about issues. If you have an issue, it's better to bite down on your mouthpiece sort of thing rather than deal with it. I don't know. I think that's part of it there. 38% of people said they would not be open to receiving treatment, including therapy or medication. So, as on that note, on therapy, I've done therapy numerous times as from like 16 to 18 was a dark period of time in my life. And, a lot of it's just, going through puberty. My mom kicked me out of my house. I'm living with my dad, all this sort of stuff. So, what I can say about therapy for those 38% people is that oftentimes it helps. And if you don't think it's going to help, that's fine. But it doesn't really cost you anything other than about an hour of your time and a little bit of money. And a lot of times your health insurance covers it almost in full. So I would say if you're thinking that, it's a waste of time, this or that, give it about 5 treatments and see if it helps. Would I do it again nowadays if I felt like it? No, I feel like that I have a healthy relationship, and if I have issues, I have somebody to talk to, and that's sort of it. A lot of times when you get in your mental health, and as this has sort of mental health issues, is a lot of it's just unwinding, saying what needs to be said, thinking that you're not the only one, and being able to express clearly what the issues are. And so, if you have someone you feel you can talk to, then perhaps you don't need a paid professional. Not to say they don't provide other things, but I do think if you're in a healthy relationship that you can have somebody to talk to, and that should be enough. Yep, majority of people said that it's going to affect their work. Of course it is. You can't just turn shit on and off in your life. And a third of people, I'm surprised this isn't higher, to be honest. I thought it's at 85%. But they didn't interview developers. They just interviewed people. Productivity was affected at least one way: difficulty concentrating, avoiding social activities, difficult thinking, taking longer to do tasks. So let's talk about all the ones in here that by your mental health issues affect you as a developer. Productivity, that's 1. Difficulty concentrating, that's 2. Avoiding social activities, we'll skip over that, but you could say meetings. Difficult thinking and reasoning, that's 3. Taking longer to do tasks, that's 4. Less responsive emails, other communications, 5. Communication is huge as a developer. Difficulty juggling tasks or responsibilities, 6. Putting off challenging work, 7. Lower quality of work, 8. Difficulty learning new things, 9. Less patient with customers and clients. I'm going to say that's always the case, so we ain't going to count that one. Less confident about decisions or taking responsibilities. We could say that, so on and so forth. And already we're at 10. 10 things that I think directly are going to impact your job as a developer. And these are very generic, but those are the ones I think just going from the list top to bottom. And there's a couple more we could add it on there. So, 90% of transgendered respondents left a job due at least part in mental health reasons. Yeah, that seems about right. 86% job seekers think it's important for a company's culture to support mental health. Absolutely. We need to. I talked about this in a previous survey about how the physical benefits. The wellness programs are like number 1, number 2 benefit for a lot of people. Like, people are very interested in that. Mental health stigma at work. Nearly half of all respondents knew someone with a mental health condition, but only a third knew someone with a mental health condition at work. Keeping that secret, which it's okay to talk about these things. Part of the reason I talk about money, for instance, is it's okay to talk about it. If you don't talk about money, you don't know what to do with money, and same thing with mental health. If you don't talk about mental health, you don't know where to get help. Let's see here. I've talked to someone about mental health in a workplace setting. 15% in the past month. In the past year, 40%. So 60% said never. Absolutely never. And to be honest, I understand why. I don't think it's going to be perceived all that well, right? And you got to have a job. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't take care of it outside of work. And I wish that wasn't the case. Least comfortable talking with a company's HR and senior leaders. So that needs to be changed, because part of that, I think, is that these are people who are your superiors to a degree. HR is not necessarily superior, but they do have some input. 62 felt comfortable giving support. So, but if you're looking for a peer to talk to, 2 out of 3 are likely to help you. 9 out of 10 people saw at least some barrier to talk about mental health. Leadership. Most don't feel that they're supported. Less than half felt like their manager was equipped to support them. Almost 2/3 have used PTO, leaves of absence, or part-time work to adjust for it. Most don't know how to even ask for it. And then most common obstacles were lack of knowledge, experience, and time. Kind of makes sense. Let's see what their conclusion. Experienced mental health systems is the norm in all workplaces of all level of an organization. That's pretty sad. However, employees aren't comfortable talking about mental health, especially senior leaders. As a result, productivity is negatively affected. Some employees have left their companies for mental health reasons. We need better support systems and workplace culture. Absolutely. So if you're interested in following any of this other stuff, let's actually just jump real quick to let's jump to me. I want to find out about me. Men were 44% more likely to report symptoms of aggression than women. Interesting. Tech industry. Oh, here we go, baby. Researchers working at tech companies were more open to talk about mental health and willing to hire or work with colleagues with mental health. However, they were also significantly more likely to say that their work or their work environment contributed to experiencing symptoms of mental health conditions. Findings. Productivity, retention, and recruitment. 55% of tech employees said their work or workplace environment contributed to experiencing symptoms of mental health conditions compared to 37%. Huh. Strange. 55% of respondents had left a job due, at least in part, to mental health reasons compared to 35% of all respondents. So you can see that in our industry, this is more of a issue than in other industries. All right, company size. This is something I'm in. Respondents at companies 1150 were almost 50% more likely to have discussed than at a 10,000 person company. Respondents said 11 to 50 person companies were the least likely to have reported or a positive response when talking to someone at their companies. That's because small companies, in my opinion, don't have the bankroll to help out, while larger companies want to retain you. And then at these larger companies, 42% more likely to receive a positive response than at the smaller companies. And then this goes into they collected a little bit about the data. This is from an online survey March to April. 1,500 individuals. All respondents were at least 16 years of age, employed full-time at a company with at least 11 employees. So I think we learned something today, is that mental health is important. That's sort of what I really wanted to talk about and get across, right? So we all have moments in time where sometimes people think mental health is referring to mental illness. That's not what I'm talking about. Mental health is referring to you taking care of yourself and making sure that you are... I can tell you that physical health is important, and I've ignored that, but mental health is something I don't ignore. But take care of yourself, guys. Make sure that you are respecting yourself as much as you should. Make sure that you are doing what you need to, because these things are compounding effects. These things are stuff that they keep on going one on top of the other, and then it gets harder to pull back the layers because you just built on so much. And, I hope you're taking care of yourself, because unfortunately, especially in the software industry, it's oftentimes high stress, high deadline, and high workload. And if you don't set a way to manage your mental health, oftentimes other people will, and it won't be to your benefit. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching the video. If you're interested in any of my courses, there are links in the description below. I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hey guys, don't forget to hit that notification bell or smash that like button while you're at it. And if you're interested, I just released my latest course, the 100 Front-End Technical Question Challenge, which is there to help you pass those front-end technical interviews. There's over 100 questions. You can get it for just $9.99. The link is in the description below, or use coupon code CodingGod.